Welcome to the IDRA podcast, where we talk about equity, opportunity, and what it really takes to transform education systems. I'm Liz Piñon, and today I'm so honored to be joined by Dr. Garcia, also known as the STEM Queen, an incredible educator and advocate. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into her recent piece on the state of women and girls in STEM and what it really tells us about systems, access, and opportunity. Doctora Garcia, I want to start with your why. In your latest article, you reflect on writing about this issue back in 2019. And here we are 7 years later, and you say not much has changed. That really stayed with me. As a first generation Latina STEM educator, you've seen this across time. So, what keeps you committed to this work?
Thank you so much. And I'm just so grateful to be here too with you and to talk about, the state of women and girls in STEM. And yeah, unfortunately, when I started writing about it in 2019, 7 years later now, nothing has changed enough like it should have been. And, the big thing that I think the big takeaway is it's not about ability, it's about systems, right? And my why really is to continue to drive this work forward because talent is evenly distributed, but opportunity isn't. And that's one of the things that I really want to change. And my why is really seeing students' lives transformed, seeing access for the first time to new opportunities and a bright future. And so that's definitely my why. And there's a lot of work to be done. So I'm grateful to be in community with others who are also aligned to this work. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I like that. I like what you said. You said, um,
It's about transforming lives. It's about opening doors that haven't been opened yet, right? And to new possibilities and a brighter future for students. It's definitely my why, and it keeps me motivated, to keep doing this work, even though it's hard work, right?
Sounds good. Thank you for that. So as I have to say, like this is deeply personal for me too, right? As a bilingual educator, as a mom of children with disabilities, I've seen how firsthand how access can completely change a child's trajectory or limit it, right? And
Mhm.
it keeps bringing me back to what you're naming in your article. That's what it was. Talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not. That
Mhm.
really resonated with me.
Yeah.
You ground this on data in a really powerful way. You share that women make up 35% of the STEM workforce,
Mhm.
despite being nearly half of the overall workforce. Tell me
Mhm.
more about this. When you look at the snapshot, what concerns you most right now?
Yeah. I really look forward each year to this report that I reference in the article, the National Girls Collaborative Project. They've been a great partner since I started at IDRA. That's when I learned about them back in 2019. And the work that they're doing is even more critical now than ever. And I love that they publish this report each year. And I feel like it would really support organizations like IDRA and others that are doing STEM education work and really STEM workforce, and pathway development. I think there was a lot to be concerned about in that report, which isn't new. Every year, there's jaw-dropping data that they share, and that a lot of it that you wouldn't be, you would be really surprised by. The one that you mentioned is surprising, and that number hasn't changed over the, past few years. We see that women are still underrepresented in STEM and in the STEM workforce, and especially women of color, under 10% are represented, and that's shocking, that hasn't changed much over the past 7 years, and that's still work that's crucial for us to focus on. Um, and some other data that they shared, like there's so much to cover, but one of the stats that they shared was that 57% of girls don't believe they're smart enough for their dream career, and we're going to talk about confidence and we're going to talk about, all of that, but it's again, I think the driving kind of reflection that I got from that report and some others that I reviewed is that, we don't have a pipeline problem. We have a participation and persistence problem. And so that's a really big issue that we need to focus on.
And you center this so clearly in your article. When I was doing a little bit of research, I heard that like, how about a Latina in the STEM workforce with a disability? I heard it's less than 1% and a fraction in some of those uh, workforce professions.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
and that's disheartening, right?
Yeah.
So you
It
center
is.
this is so clearly in your article that the issue isn't necessarily ability, that
Mm.
it's access, culture, and confidence. Starting with
Hmm.
access, talk to me a little bit, Dr. Garcia, about how anti-DEI policies and the dismantling of programs are directly impacting participation.
Yeah, it's been crushing all of the, anti-diversity, equity, inclusion laws and policies, everything has just dismantled, defunded high quality programming. It's our support systems that have just been completely crushed. And those support systems are critical to STEM persistence for women and girls, and it's under attack. And it's frustrating to see that. There were so many gains, there were so many programs and bridging programs that supported girls and women in STEM that are no longer in existence, right? And so now with fewer opportunities to engage, interest could decline, participation and persistence could decline even more. And it's just a significant, massive loss of potential talent, ideas, and perspectives. And this really hits home for me, and then that leads to culture, right? And we know that cultural stereotypes often frame STEM careers as being unsuitable or incompatible for women. And we see there's a lot of barriers in workplaces. And so that culture in the workplaces definitely needs to change. And role models are a key approach and really emphasis that we need to turn our attention to because it changes things. Girls often have limited exposure to relatable women in STEM roles. And so we definitely need to increase those opportunities for students and even through guidance counseling, through different mentorship experiences. We need to invest in all of that in our efforts even more. And lastly, confidence, like you said, confidence is big. Students' self-perception of what I can do, right? And a lot of that perception declines between fifth and 12th grade. And so this work starts earlier and earlier for us so that girls aren't self-selecting out because again, it's not that they can't do STEM. They're opting out because the system is kind of like quietly telling them or loudly telling them it's not for them, right? And so we've got to give students more opportunities to lead and to lean into leadership opportunities that will help build confidence for students and help them see themselves in these roles that are innovative, that are problem solving, that have real world applications. And so those are some of the kind of aha moments that and big takeaways that I read through all of that data and the reports.
So can I go back a little bit and ask you, how do we, you mentioned a couple of examples, but how do we begin shifting that culture in a real way?
Yeah, there's a lot of different recommendations for sure. And I know, this is kind of where IDRA shines. We've got a lot of cross-sector partnership work and alignment that's taking place, especially here in San Antonio as we co-lead the Alamo STEM ecosystem. This has to be community rooted. So educators, industry, higher education, we're all carving out and architecting different pathways so that students have a chance, not just so they see opportunity, but actually have tangible access to those opportunities. And so we've got to invest in teachers. We've got to invest in teachers as multipliers. A lot of, I think, folks don't see the value in that, and they should because our teachers are reaching so many students in their classrooms, in their school communities, and the programs that they run. And so we've got to definitely, work with our teachers and work with our counselors and all of those folks that play such a pivotal role in students as they're navigating and persisting through the STEM pathway.
And Dr. Garcia, I have like a lived experience. I went to a parent meeting the other day, and I have one son and two daughters. And when I went to speak with what the science teacher for my son, she was like, "Oh, he needs to be in STEM. He would be wonderful." And Felicita, my other daughter, also has actually higher scores than him, and that was never mentioned in the conversation, right?
Mhm.
So how do we, when we look at like so many in many cases, they're not even like uh talking about all girls, right? Because when we talk about
Mhm.
girls in STEM, much less when you look at a Latino girl with disability. So how do we
Mhm.
build these systems that really support students that aren't even measuring, that we're not even measuring? How do we make sure that we're looking at the data closely?
Mhm. Yeah, this work requires change at multiple levels, right? Like when we think about policy, when we think about culture in the STEM workplace and also in our classrooms and school culture, and then leadership accountability, right? All of this um, is there's tons of entry points to tackle this. Some of the recommendations that really supported growth in this area and really systems level momentum was mentorship. Having mentors that are relevant, that can connect to students, that look like them, that maybe are from the same school or similar schools that the students are from, people that can really help increase girls' confidence and really help influence those career aspirations. Mentorship came up time and time again through all of the reporting because it's just that important. It matters. Mentorship matters. Also, hands-on experiences, right? Those internships, job shadowing. I know here in San Antonio, there's like paid internships for girls in middle school that a lot of girls just don't know about, and they can get summer experiences and jobs that can really help be pivotal experiences for them and change their trajectory, and really help them see their skills and their value. And so all of those investments are super important. There's a lot that could be done with investments in outreach. And like I said earlier, those bridging programs from elementary to middle, middle to high school, and high school to college. All of those programs can help with retention, with attainment, for women and girls in STEM, especially students of color and first generation students like myself. So those programs matter and they make a huge difference for students.
Dr. Garcia, one thing I really appreciated about your article is that you didn't just name the problems. You pointed to some clear solutions, right? You talked about mentorships, hands-on experience, that cross-sector collaboration, that you're like knee deep in that work. And in my work at IDRA, we talk a lot about that ecosystem alignment, right? Because
Yes.
this isn't about schools can solve alone. We need the educators, higher ed, everyone, a community working to build these real pathways. One last question. What does that ecosystem look like when it's actually working well?
Oh, wow. I think about it, a lot of people kind of show a graphic when it comes to like the STEM pathway of like a leaky STEM pipeline where it's like, as students are progressing through we're losing students. I don't see it that way. I feel like that's kind of a deficit way of looking at it. I think a really healthy ecosystem, it kind of looks like a river, if you will, or a highway system with tons of multiple entries and exit points where students, no matter what grade that they're, in, no matter what age that they're in, they can jump back on. There's a lot of students who, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that we've interviewed before, even our keynote speaker at our educator, Alamo STEM Ecosystem Educator Conference this year. He talked about how he wasn't in STEM programming, but then he started to tinker and he was curious. And he, later on in life, he went back and got his degree in engineering. And then from there, he started his own company building bionic hands to serve people that were in need at a more affordable cost. And he talked about how he was just a student that loved gaming. And eventually he started tinkering and building. And then it turned into, let me go back and get my engineering degree. And it was a very untraditional path. And I feel like there's not a one size fits all approach with STEM education. And so I feel like we need to remember that, as a nonprofit that's building programs for students and teachers in community with other partners in higher ed and industry, we need to work together to build a pathway that has lots of entry points and exit points for them to discover and learn something new about themselves, and maybe they'll come back to it again later. And that's the beauty of it. And I think that, again, I think there's a lot of work to be done, but it's got to be community rooted, right? And that's what we're really excited about doing here in our STEM ecosystems.
Doctora Gracia, this work has happened. What I'm hearing is that this work happens at these multiple levels: policy,
Yep.
culture, leadership, accountability. We can't keep asking students to navigate systems that weren't really designed for them. It's our responsibility to fix them because the impact of this work, as you've seen, is life-changing. So, Doctora Garcia, thank you for your leadership, your voice, and for counting to push this conversation forward. Do you have any last message to our listeners?
Well, let's just do this work together. I think there's, everybody, especially from different sectors, we all have a unique lens and a unique approach to this work. And there's no right or wrong way of doing it. I think it's just identifying a solution, starting small, starting somewhere, and making sure that, students are at the center of those conversations, and families and teachers, so that you stay anchored and grounded in that work. And yeah, it's again, it's life-changing work. So we're excited about it, and definitely work with us. Reach out to IDRA if you're interested, if you have new ideas, to really move this needle forward so that we're not having this same conversation 7 years down the road. Let's try to work together, because we all have brilliance and expertise in our own areas. And there's a lot of work to be done together. So definitely reach out to us.
And thank you for everyone for listening. Let's keep building systems that truly recognize the brilliance of all our students. Gracias.